Okay, so this is kind of what you need to do seasoning on your cast iron. This is the worst one that I could find out of my whole collection. You can see the season is still good up here, but where it got the heat really hit it hard here. It started to break down, and now I don't even have a season. It's actually, you can see it rubs right off onto my fingers. So this is going to be re-seasoned. The back of it is still pretty good, but I re-season both sides when I re-season it. And then these two are smaller woks. The one on this one, I just re-seasoned, so it's shiny, it's black, it's slick, it's ready to be used. This one I haven't done yet. It still has, again, the original seasoning that I put on it, but again, in the middle it's just starting to break down, so I'm going to do this one. This is why I do it every 6 months, to keep up so everything looks really good. And the back still looks really good. It's got that nice shiny black on it. It's just where the food sits that it starts to break down, the carbonization. The black here is caused by high heat and certain oils that get to a smoking point, and it turns it into a carbon, and that's what this black is, and that's what protects the cast iron from rust and from acidic food and other things like that. So some of the oils that you would use would be, I have bacon grease here. This is actually a cookie jar that I got at Walmart for $20, but it works great. This was just a sieve. I actually cut the handle part off, and it fits in here perfectly. And I can filter out my bacon grease, so this is my bacon grease. And bacon grease really never goes bad. You can use it for cooking. It's really good for seasoning cast iron because its smoking point is about 350 to 400 degrees. So I'll show you how to rub it on. And then you bake it anywhere from half an hour to 45 minutes. And you get this really beautiful black coating. And the more often you do it, the blacker your cast iron will get. And then there's also coconut oil. Coconut oil is also a high heat oil. It works very well. And then there's lard. Lard is also very good. Some people use shortening, but I found that shortening gets gummy. Instead of turning into a slick surface, it gets sticky. And then there's also avocado oil. These are the 4 different things that I use. Now to clean it, this is probably your best tool. I think it's like $13 on Amazon. You can hang it if you want to. It's sort of like chainmail. That's what my boys think it is. And you just get a little bit of soap and water in here, and you scrub it. And that gets off. It smooths the surface really well. So even up here, I just did it without any soap and water. And even up here, it smoothed down the seasoning that had burned off, rubbed off unevenly. And down in here, it's made it very smooth. If you have any like burnt on food, this little item works really, really well. You can see it actually got stuff off. So the next thing to do is to get a rag. Where did the rag go? Behind me. I just use an old dirty dishcloth that's not good for anything anymore. And I'll wipe it out now. Get any residue off. And then I like bacon grease, so that's what I'm going to go with. And you take any kind of a rag. I don't like using paper towels because it tends to shred and you have all these little paper towel pieces all over, and sometimes it actually gets baked onto the metal. So I like to use cloth, and you just get it in there. And you're going to rub it in. You want it rubbed everywhere. Every surface. And inside the handle, everything. So any area that could potentially get rust will have a layer of seasoning on it. can to do several at the same time, since your oven is going to be at 400 degrees. You might as well get as many done as you can fit into your oven. It will create smoke because it has to reach the smoking point of the oil. Every oil has a different temperature where it starts to smoke at. The oils that I showed you all are between 350 and 400. Some have a lower smoking point. I don't like to use those because, like I said in my post, they tend to get kind of gummy, and I don't like that. So I'm going to center that there. I'm going to go back through here because I handled it, so some of the bacon grease came off on my fingers. I'm going to come through here as well. Now I'm going to take the area that I didn't put bacon grease on. I'm going to come through and wipe off as much as I can. I just want the very thinnest layer of bacon grease on here. If you get too much, it rolls down, it pools in the middle, it'll drip off the sides. You don't want too much. You want the thinnest layer possible. And you can do multiple layers over time. Okay, so this one is done. And again, I'm going to cover this up because I wiped it off on my hands. And this one's ready to go into the oven. Here's the smaller one. I'm going to use my little handy dandy thingy here. Another thing that this little chainmail does is, over time, if you notice, it's still semi-new. I've only had this about 3 years. It's bumpy in here. A lot of cast iron will come a little bit bumpy, and over time when you're cooking, it becomes super smooth and flat because you're hitting it with spatulas. You're cooking food that's a little acidic and it burns through the metal enough to start making it smooth. This sort of speeds up the process by sanding it down ever so slightly, not hard at all. I'm just going to wipe it out on the inside. And now if you look, you can't really tell where the season started and where it ended. It's all kind of one color now. I'm going to use my bacon grease again. And in the back I see there's some little spots here. Just by doing that, we've changed the color to where it's almost all the same color instead of worn areas and still seasoned areas. So now I'll put the bacon grease on. Oops. There we go. I'm going to make sure I get all the way up and around the edge. Anywhere that could have been touching the cloth, I want to make sure it's covered. I'm going to go back. As you can see, I'm going to go back and wipe off as much as I can, although this will probably drip down into the bottom of my oven. And I'm going to wipe out as much as I can here. Over the top rim and over the handle. Now this one, I'll show you how I put it in, because I'm going to put it into the oven and sit it directly on the oven rack. but because I will be handling it, where I handle it, the bacon grease will actually come off. So I'm going to actually put it in with this. Put it in there, and then I'm just going to let it sit a little bit out, and I'm going to rub all over so every spot that I potentially touched is coated. And that's it. Now it's going to stay in there. It will probably start smoking within 10 to 15 minutes, and I will let it smoke for another 15 to 20 minutes. And I'll check and see how it looks, and I'll show you how I determine whether it's time to take it out or not. Okay, so both of these I seasoned over the last like 2 weeks or so. This one has been used a lot, probably over the last 10 or 15 years. It's been used a lot, and as you can see, it is so smooth. It's like a non-stick pan in here. There's not a single bump on here at all. This is about 2 years old, and if you can look inside there, I don't know how it'll show up in the camera, but you can see all these little teeny tiny bumps from the manufacturing process. Over time, these bumps do wear down. But again, if you use this every time you wash it, every time you clean it, you're actually slowly making it as smooth as this. So when you go to season it, you can see how black this is. This still has a little bit of the gray tint that it came with before it was fully seasoned. It's starting to turn black. This one is pure black in here. And the difference is this one is smoother. It holds onto the carbonized coating much better than the bumpy one. And some people will tell you you can get a wire brush and with a drill or something and sand it all smooth. You can do that, but it actually can ruin your pan too because it can be sanded unevenly. You're also ruining the top surface and recreating a surface, and if you don't do it the right way, if you gouge it, if you do something that permanently damages the pan, you're stuck. You would have to start all over again and try and redo it. I know it's real popular on YouTube, but the people who use cast iron the most, even the cast iron companies will tell you, do not use a wire brush, do not use a sander on your cast iron. You're gouging into the metal itself. You can be weakening the metal, and you can be destroying the finish for life. Another thing people do is they will take a cast iron pan and they'll put it in a fire, and what they're trying to do is burn down any kind of buildup on the outside, or anything that's burned onto the edge. They're trying to burn it off, and what it does is it superheats the metal, and it can actually destroy your cast iron. So never ever ever put it in a fire. It's all over YouTube right now. Put it in a fire. If it glows red, you've absolutely ruined it, because the metal has permanently been superheated and it will crack. It's weak. If you drop it, it will crack. If you put food in it, like something cold, it will shatter. That's why these things are destroyed, because people have ruined them. I knew somebody who did this, and she got a nice big fire going and put all of her cast iron in there, and when she took it out, it was like rusty colored. It never went away no matter how much she scrubbed. She had permanently ruined the metal, the cast iron itself. If you have to get rid of gunk on the outside, it's not going to do any damage to the pan itself to have the gunk on there. It just doesn't look real good. Some people don't like it. Get onto YouTube or Google and find out how to use a lye bath appropriately. You use oven cleaner, you spray it top, bottom, you put it in a plastic bag, and you let it sit there for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and it slowly eats through all of that gunk, and it just scrubs right off with this, sometimes even just a brush, and you can take it off that way. That's the safe way to do it, but never in a hot fire, never in a wood stove. You don't want to superheat it like that, because basically what you're doing when you do that is you're trying to remelt this, basically, because that's the temperatures that it's at. And iron melts much lower temperatures than steel and other metals. So that's another warning on what not to do with cast iron. And if you use cast iron constantly, you will end up with pans that look like this. These are the premium pans. This is what everybody loves, are these really shiny black, super slick, smooth cast iron. And it does take time to build it up. So if you start off with the bumpy ones, just know that within 3 to 5 years it'll be smoothing out, and it will start getting darker and darker every time you season it. And eventually you'll have one of the really, really nice cast iron pots, pans, Dutch ovens. Yeah. Here it's coming out of the oven. And you can see it's got a beautiful finish on it. It's completely done right now. You just have to let it cool off. It might be the tiniest bit sticky. Not really. In fact, if I do this, you see there's nothing there. It's just completely seasoned. There's nothing even coming off on this old rag. This is completely coated, fully seasoned. It's nice and black in there, whereas before there was that ring right around this middle where you could see the actual metal and there was some rust going on. Right now it's completely seasoned, it's black, it's gorgeous, and it just needs to cool off. And then it'll be ready to go back on the shelf. And that's how you season cast iron. It's very simple. You just follow some basic rules. Always have the oven hot enough to create smoke using the oil that you're using. And you can keep it in there 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, however long you want to, as long as you reach the smoking point where smoke starts coming off of your pan. And that's it. If you have any questions, let me know.